They said my heart stopped for 6 full minutes. 6. That is long enough to be gone forever. I remember the sirens, the panic, the sharp pain in my chest, then silence. Cold, unnatural silence. Everything faded. And just when I thought it would all go black, something else appeared. A presence. A force so overwhelming I could not explain it with science or logic. I had mocked believers all my life, but what I saw shook me to my core. I thought I knew everything. I was wrong. Before I share the full truth of what I saw on the other side, I want to thank every one of you watching and subscribing to this channel. For those who are watching but don't subscribe yet, thank you. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button. It is the fuel and energy that keeps this channel alive. Please do not forget to engage with your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you believe about life, death and what comes after. Me name is Jonathan Miller. I am a 48-year-old man born and raised in Indiana, USA. I was the guy who laughed at church signs, debated pastors, and rolled my eyes at prayer. I considered myself a rational thinker, a man of facts, reason and science. My motto was simple: if I cannot touch it, measure it or see it, it is not real. I was not always cold. I grew up in a loving home. My mother was a gentle woman of faith. My father was quiet, hard-working and tolerant of my questions. But by the time I reached college, I had read enough books and sat through enough debates to decide that God was a fairy tale. I told myself religion was a crutch for the weak, the scared, and the uneducated. I built a life around success. I owned a software company, drove a black Tesla, and lived in a 5-bedroom house in the suburbs of Chicago. I had everything money could buy but still felt hollow. I filled the silence with noise, TV, drinks and women I did not love. The more I had, the less I felt. I argued with my sister Rachel, all the time. She was the last one in our family who held on to faith after our mother passed. I said something cruel to her once after Mom's funeral. She was crying and whispering about heaven. I looked her in the eye and said, "There is no such place, Rachel. Mom is gone. Worm food. Accept it." That was 3 years ago. It was late February. I had been driving back from a tech conference in Indianapolis. I remember it was raining hard, and my phone buzzed with a message from a colleague. I glanced down for half a second. That was all it took. The truck ahead of me slammed its brakes. I hit mine, but it was too late. The airbags exploded in my face. Then everything went white. I heard sirens, distant voices shouting. I drifted in and out as paramedics worked on me. I felt needles, straps, the taste of metal in my mouth. Then nothing. No pain, no sound, just stillness. I died on that stretcher. My heart stopped. That is what the doctors said later. 6 minutes of cardiac arrest, flatline. Gone. But I was not gone. I was still somewhere. At first it was blackness, like being inside a room with no walls, no floor, no ceiling, just endless dark. I thought to myself, so this is it, non-existence. I should have felt peace or relief. Instead I felt dread. A pull, a strange heaviness that wrapped around me like chains. Then in the distance, a light appeared. Not the warm glowing kind you hear about in movies. This light felt ancient, powerful. It grew brighter and closer. I should have felt comfort. Instead I felt exposed, like everything I had ever done, said, or thought was being laid bare. I could not hide. I could not run. And then I felt him. Not a man, not a ghost, not anything I could truly describe. But I knew it was a presence, intelligent, holy and terrifying. Not in a horror movie way, but in a way that made me realize, I had been wrong. So deeply, utterly wrong. It was like standing before pure truth. I had spent my whole life declaring there was no God. But in that moment I knew he was real. He had always been real, and he knew me. I remembered every moment I had mocked believers, every time I had scoffed at my mother's prayers, every cruel word I had said to my sister. It all came back in waves, not just in memory, but in feeling. I felt their pain, their sadness, their prayers for me. It crushed me. I wanted to fall to my knees, I wanted to beg, but I had no mouth, no body, just awareness, and that was enough to feel the deepest shame I had ever known. Then I saw something else. A glimpse. Like the curtain was pulled back just a little. What I saw on the other side of that light made me tremble. It was not hell, not yet, but it was enough to break the toughest heart. Just when the light was about to consume me, I heard a voice, not with my ears, but in my soul. A voice that said, "It is not your time." And just like that I snapped back. I opened my eyes to the blinding hospital lights. Doctors were shouting. A nurse was holding defibrillator pads. I was drenched in sweat. My chest burned, and I was screaming. Screaming like a man who had seen something too real to explain. The first words I remember saying were, "He is real. He is real." The room went quiet. What I saw during those 6 minutes was only the beginning. The real story began after I came back, when the world refused to believe me, when I started seeing and hearing things that no one else could, and when a visitor came to my room and said something that changed everything. If you are still watching, I need to know, what do you think I saw? Was it heaven? Was it just my brain? Or something more? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. This journey is only beginning. When I woke up in that hospital room, I was not the same man who had left it. I looked around, dazed, sweat soaking through the thin hospital gown, heart monitors beeping steadily beside me. The first face I saw was Rachel, my sister, the same one I had mocked for years because of her faith. She was holding my hand and praying softly. The moment I looked at her, she gasped. I had not cried in years, but the tears came rushing like a river breaking through a dam. "I was wrong," I whispered, voice shaking. "Rachel, I was wrong about everything." I will never forget her expression. It was a mix of shock, relief, and something else. Awe. 2 days after I regained consciousness, something strange happened. It was late, around 3 a.m. The hospital halls were quiet, the kind of silence only broken by soft footsteps, or the distant rattling of a nurse's cart. I was lying there, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I had seen during those 6 minutes of death. That was when I noticed him. A man stood at the foot of my bed, tall, lean, with an expression that was calm but intense. His eyes held something ancient. Something I could not describe. He wore no hospital badge, no scrubs, just a plain gray coat and dark trousers. "Who are you?" I asked. He did not answer immediately. He just looked at me, and then spoke in a voice that was gentle yet firm. "You were not supposed to see what you saw, Jonathan. But now that you have, you must decide what you will do with it." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer and said, "You stood in the presence of truth. Most people never come back from there. You were given a gift, but gifts carry responsibility." Before I could ask another question, he turned and walked toward the door. I pressed the call button. A nurse came rushing in. "Did you see him?" I asked. "See who?" she replied. "The man in the gray coat. He was just here." She looked confused. "Sir, no one has come through that door all night." I knew what I saw. I was not asleep. I was not hallucinating. Something or someone was guiding me. And that terrified me more than dying. That night, when I finally closed my eyes, the light returned. Not as fierce as before, but present. This time, it did not overwhelm me. It surrounded me like a gentle fire, warm but powerful. I was back in that space, the in-between. But I was no longer alone. I saw people. Glimpses of faces I did not recognize. Some weeping. Some kneeling. Some singing in a language I had never heard. Their voices rang with a purity I had never experienced on earth. And then a presence came near. I knew it was him again. The same presence I felt when I died. I did not see a face, only light, and a voice. "Why did you deny me?" it asked. Not in anger, but with sorrow. I wanted to explain. I wanted to say that I had never seen enough proof, that the world was full of pain, that science had made more sense. But the truth was simple. I was too proud. I had worshipped my own mind, my own logic, my own achievements. I had made myself God. The presence spoke again. "You have been given a second chance. Use it to tell the truth." Just like that, I was back in my bed, heart racing, breathing fast, but this time, I knew exactly what I had to do. When I was discharged, I tried to tell people what happened. I spoke on a podcast. I posted my story online. I called old friends. Most of them laughed. A few thought I had lost my mind. Even people who once respected me now kept their distance. You, a believer now, they said. What happened to logic and science? The hardest part was my business partners. They staged a quiet push to remove me from my own company. They said I was emotionally unstable. I lost everything I had worked for. But I did not care anymore. Something bigger than my career had been shown to me. 3 weeks later, I did something I never thought I would do. I walked into a church, not as a protester, not as a critic, but as a broken man searching for light. I sat in the back pew and wept. I did not know the hymns. I did not understand all the scripture. But something in me shifted. After the service, an old pastor came up to me. He said, "You look like a man who saw something." I nodded. I did. He smiled and said, "You are not the first, and you will not be the last. What no one tells you is that coming back from death changes you. Everything tastes different. Sounds feel deeper. The sun feels like a kiss. Time feels like a gift. But along with the wonder, there is weight, a heavy sense that you were sent back for a reason. Some nights, I still see flashes. I hear songs that I cannot find in any music store. I feel touches on my shoulder when I am alone. And sometimes, I feel that same presence again, always reminding me, tell them. So here I am, telling you. I died, I saw truth, and I came back to share it. I will tell you about the strangest thing of all, what happened when I met a boy in the park, who knew things he should not have known. He described the very vision I saw, down to the last detail. How could he have known? You will find out soon. It had been nearly 6 months since my heart stopped in that hospital room, since I saw the light, and since my life changed forever. I had lost my career, my reputation, and many of the friends I once called close. But somehow, I felt more alive than I had ever been. I had taken to walking alone in the park every morning, just to breathe in the quiet, to reflect, and sometimes to talk to God, not with rehearsed prayers but with raw honesty. I still did not know how to pray properly. I only knew how to speak from my heart. That seemed to be enough. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened on one of those early mornings. It was a chilly Sunday. Leaves covered the path, and birds chirped lazily as the sun stretched across the horizon. I took my usual route, coffee in hand, jacket zipped up to my neck. As I rounded the bend by the fountain, I saw a little boy sitting alone on a wooden bench. He looked no older than 8. He wore a red hoodie and black sneakers that were too big for his feet. His eyes were fixed on the lake, deep in thought. There was something about him that made me stop. He looked still, not bored or restless like most kids, just still, as if he were waiting. I approached slowly. "Hey there," I said, keeping my tone soft. "You waiting for someone?" He looked at me and for a moment his eyes met mine, wide, innocent, but strangely knowing. He said, "No, I am waiting for you." I chuckled, assuming he had mistaken me for someone else. "I do not think we have met before." "You died," he said flatly. "You saw the place where the singing never stops, where the light does not hurt your eyes." I dropped my coffee. My hands trembled. "What did you just say?" The boy did not flinch. He simply turned back toward the lake and spoke again, his voice quiet but firm. "You went to the golden space. You felt the love that does not end. You were surrounded by peace, but then you were pulled back." I could not breathe. This child was describing exactly what I had seen during my near-death experience: the light, the singing, the overwhelming peace. "How do you know that?" I asked. He glanced at me again. "Because I went there too, twice. The second time, they told me to wait, that someone else would come back and speak." I sat down beside him, not knowing what else to do. My mind raced. Could he be a plant, a hallucination? Was I going insane? But when I looked at his face, I saw something I could not deny: purity, stillness, truth. His name was Micah. He said he had drowned in a pool when he was 3. His heart had stopped for 8 minutes before paramedics revived him. No one had believed him when he tried to explain what he saw afterward. He had stopped talking for nearly 2 years. His mother thought he had developmental issues. Doctors called it trauma. "I was not scared," Micah said. I just did not know how to explain something that big with words that small. I asked him what he saw. He paused and smiled faintly. There was a light that sang. It did not speak, but it told me everything all at once. I saw people dancing, but they were not using their legs. They were just joy. And there was a gate. It looked like fire and glass. I wanted to go in, but a voice told me, "Not yet. You will help someone find their way." That was you. My hands were clenched in my lap. My throat was dry. I felt like I was hearing prophecy, except it was coming from the lips of a child on a park bench. "How do you know it was me?" I whispered. "Because I saw your face before I ever met you," he replied. "You were covered in shadows. But now there is light on you. You are glowing inside, even if you do not see it yet." When I finally left the park that day, I turned back to thank him again. But Micah was gone. Just gone. I searched around, asked a jogger, looked at the nearby playground. No sign of him, and none of the parents there had seen a child in a red hoodie that morning. It was as if he had vanished. I returned the next day, and the day after that. But I never saw Micah again. Was he an angel? Was he real? I ask myself that almost every day. But the truth is, whether he was a flesh and blood child, or a divine messenger, it does not matter. His message was clear. My experience was not a hallucination, it was real, and I was meant to share it. Today I speak to people all across the country. I do not carry a Bible. I do not scream at anyone from a pulpit. I just tell my story. My old audience, the scientific minds and atheist groups, I still talk to them too, not to argue, just to share. Some scoff, some laugh, but some weep, some come forward quietly, after the talks and say, "I saw something too, and I know I am not alone." I have met former soldiers who saw light on the battlefield, nurses who heard singing in the ICU, children who speak of gates made of gold and glass, and ordinary people, just like me, who once thought death was the end. It is not. I tell you this, not because I want you to believe me blindly. I tell you because you may have questions too, doubts, pain, a longing for something more, and I want you to know, with all the honesty I can give you, that there is more. There is light, there is music, there is love that never ends, and no matter how far you have gone, or how broken you think you are, that love is still reaching for you. I was the proudest atheist I knew. Now I am a witness. I hope my story shook something in you. Now tell me in the comments, have you, or someone you know, experienced something beyond this world? Let us talk about it. Let us explore it. Let us remember, death is not the end, it is just the beginning.